All right, guys, episode 16 of the Deconstruction Podcast. We are live, brought to you by Jobtable. Jobtable is the simplest way to manage and grow your construction company. Let me kick it off with a quick testimonial here. Should have had it queued up already, but here we go. This is from Trisha. Very simple one, but this is a good one. So this software is a game changer. I can finally stay organized with invoicing, create quotes for clients within minutes, and keep track of funds coming and going. I cannot recommend this software enough. Thank you, Trisha, for that great, simple review. That's what this is, guys. For anyone listening here, if you're a contractor, a sub-trade, there are certain things in your business that you have to do regardless, right? Whether you're using a software or not, you have to take calls, intake client information, manage quotes, send quotes, create invoices, manage your scheduling, manage your jobs. Like, these are things that are just part of your business. So if you can do these things that you have to do regardless in a much simpler, more efficient, easier way, check out jobtable.com. Sign up for a 14-day free trial. I'm telling you, it'll make your life a lot easier. Give it a shot. There's nothing to lose. So with that said, Johnny, Charlie, how you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Amazing. Could not be better. Let's kick it off. We have some interesting topics today. Johnny, we're going to start off with you on this topic. So speaking from Canada, right? Like, there's, in general, in construction in Canada, we've been experiencing a pretty significant increase in the construction of rental housing units. I actually pulled up some information. So in 2024, the country saw its highest annual supply growth in over 3 decades, with purpose-built rental sector expanding by over 4%. And rentals accounted for 47% of all housing starts in the 6 largest census metropolitan areas in Canada, which is, pretty huge number, 47% in 2024. So with that being said, what are you seeing on the ground? Like, how is this impacting your business? Like, the bids you're putting out in general. So what are you seeing on the rental side and housing?
Yeah, I see a huge demand for rentals within the last, I want to say, year and a half, and I think it's a huge part of it is because what has happened here, right? The interest rates have gone through the roof. So even for those people that have saved up money for a down payment to buy a condo, with maintenance fees and everything like that, it's outrageous now, right? It's almost unattainable for like first time home buyers. So what happens is, the next avenue is rentals. And also I'm seeing as well a lot of these developers that have the approval to build a building. They were initially going to sell them as condos, but they see that, not a lot of people are buying. And I think just, to do with the inflation, high interest rates, it's literally crippling people to a point where they can't own anything. So, these builders that have, bought this land, spent all this money for approvals and design and, all the fees associated with from, trying to develop the land. They're trying to find a way also to recoup those costs. And, again, they are a business. They're trying to make some money. So I see a lot of them now shifting gears on a building that was supposed to be sold as condos. They're turning into rentals. And you see it a lot because the private sector has definitely slowed down. A lot of, and the private sector would mean people, buying houses, renovating. You see a huge slowdown on that side. And then you typically when the private sector slows down, the government spends to make up the downfall. But even on the government side, you see a big slowdown on the spending on their end as well. So this all it's a big trickle effect, and that's why you're seeing such a demand. Obviously, also as well the immigration that we've had in the past, year and a half, 2 years. It also adds to that demand. But it's pretty crazy how we went from such a booming, let's just say, real estate market to like a dead stop, right? Like I even saw, like, I'll give you a crazy one. Like I even saw the other day, it was a commercial building and they have signs on it that they're trying to turn them into lofts. And then, like rental lofts now, right? So, the commercial real estate market has taken a hit. The condo market has taken a hit. Housing market has taken a hit. And now we're just getting to a point where it's like, people are not going to own anything. It's like everybody's going to rent now, right? It's a pretty crazy thing to see here in Canada.
That's for sure. So that's interesting. So I'd imagine now, so 47, I didn't know that the stat was that high. 47% of housing starts are rentals. I'd imagine that a lot of contractors are now being incentivized by the government through probably subsidies to, instead of building for sale units, now they're building rentals, right? So how does that have any impact on how whether it's a rental or something else, is there a differentiating factor on like how the construction is actually built, or is it the same regardless?
Well,
the building. Sorry,
go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, building wise, I think you can actually save a lot, right? It doesn't have to be as fancy, so you're gonna save a lot on the finishes. Where you would have had hardwood floors or high-end tile, you can now have laminate floors. So not, you may not think that's a substantial saving, but when you're multiplying by 500 units and multiple buildings, you are going to start saving, and that's just one aspect of it, right? In reality, though, for a city like Toronto, I believe was the city in North America with the most towers, and like second place, I can't remember what the second place was, but it was like less than half of the towers that we had up in the city, right? So I think we were kind of like overbuilding. And now if you look at it, they don't actually build condos for families, right? If you look at these like 500 square foot condos, 700 square foot condos, you're not going to raise a family there, right? So who are they really catering to begin with? So now no one's going out to spend $500,000 on a shoebox with a high interest rate. It just really no longer makes sense. And with the cost of food and clothing and all the inflation going on, nobody can afford it anymore. So it's kind of got to the point where Johnny said that people that have that down payment, it no longer makes sense to just kind of throw that away on a condo. It just makes more sense to just get a bigger, better rental unit and then just put the rest of the money into savings or invest, right? So a lot of these smarter contractors, rather than having these buildings either not come out of the ground or kind of build it and then not be able to sell all the units, a lot of the smarter ones have actually pivoted to building these rental units because, to your point, Costa, yeah, they are being incentivized, right? And so all the people that are no longer buying, they need rentals. All the immigration that's happening, all the people coming into the country, they need to rent, right? So it's definitely a smart move for sure.
So if you're I'm thinking of every situation, right? Like this is something that's kind of out of our control, right? Like what government does, the policies they implement, and how that kind of trickles down into us. So do you see any opportunities for your typical subtrade or contractor? How can they like tap into this growing segment of construction, which is rental housing? Like, is there a way that you can think of that they can tap in to this growing demand?
You have to be aware of the people that you're working with or you're working for. So, i.e. general contractors, right? If you're only working with guys that are doing new construction for condominiums, and you see that it's slowing down, maybe don't put all your eggs into one basket, right? So that's something that we've done for years now, that we're a really unique company in the sense that, residential housing is probably what we do the least of, but we do some here and there. But we do everything from commercial, industrial, building renovations, new buildings, condos, rentals, whatever it may be. So we really have, a big portfolio and eggs in all sorts of baskets. And when we kind of see something, an avenue slowing down, we can then kind of, refocus those resources into something that is not slowing down and that's booming, right? But if you're just starting from scratch, if you're only doing condos and all of a sudden the work comes to a screeching halt, you're going to be in big trouble, right? If you're just kind of trying to pick up the pieces and change on the fly.
Do you find these types of projects take longer to complete, take shorter, or about the same?
They're about the same. Yeah, they're about the same. And just like Charlie said too, you got to pivot with the times. We talk about that a lot. I would say for anybody that, like back to your point, Costa, or your question, sorry, about how somebody can tap into this market. Well, start looking at the companies that own these rentals, right? Because a lot of times, like the older buildings, they're looking to revamp them, right? To bring the units up to par with, modern times, right? So a lot of these guys are renovating these units, and they're renovating, let's just say, in bulk, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to take these 50 units off market while we renovate them for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months, so that by the time they're renovated, they're getting, more rental income. So start looking into that market. But definitely, what I can say is, looking at the construction industry, I want to say since the beginning of 2024, it's definitely a tall tale sign of, what our government did, the type of spending that they did, and how this has trickled down, like even to a point where, developers are feeling it, right? Because even, like, you think about it, even the people that were buying condos, they were buying the condo. The second it was built, they were flipping it. What did the government do at that time, right? They imposed a tax, right? It's like everywhere you turn, no matter what it is, it's like they're there to penalize you. And it's really driving people away from even investing into any types of these markets anymore, right? And the only market that seems to not have, some type of penalty is in the rental market, right? So it's kind of sad to see, because we had such a strong, construction economy, and right now there's a lot of guys struggling, and I notice it's because a lot of the private sector, a lot of like new builds, they're coming to a screeching halt. And, it's starting to become like kind of like few and far between. Like the ones that you see going up are the ones that are near completion. It's because those ones started, 3-4 years ago, right? But like if you drive around, there's not many that are going up. And I tell you right now, like new condos, like to buy, you don't see really many starting up.
To your point, I just pulled up this very interesting chart. I don't know if you guys seen this. I'm just sharing my screen here. So this is business investment per capita, Canada and the US. So the US is the blue line. As you can see, business investment coming into the country, and Canada is just on like a sharp decline. Like look at this gap here. So, to your point, I mean, and we're all business owners here. We speak to other entrepreneurs and business owners all the time, and I've never had as many conversations as I've been having recently about just a lot of capital is leaving Canada, or like thinking about leaving Canada. And as per this chart, there's no new capital or foreign capital coming into the country right now. It's very concerning.
Everybody's getting penalized, right?
There's just no incentive.
Exactly.
Taxes are too high. There's no incentive economically here. So, unless things change, I don't know what's going to happen. But again, with that being said, it's like, hey, we're here. If you're operating here, it's like, you can't have that like, negative mindset. It's like, how do you capitalize on where we're at? So how I see with these rentals, it's, we talked about this in the last pod. Charlie brought a good point about, pivoting into service, right? So if you're a contractor now, as a sub trade working on these rental condos, that could be a good opportunity for just like ongoing service work on those condos, because these are like long-term, like forever kind of service jobs, right? So that could be a great opportunity, on that side.
Yeah, I see a lot of people that own, companies that do larger scale projects that may see that as a step down. It's beneath them to do that, right? And I get it, right? Especially, doing new construction condos, it's completely different than running a fully functional service company. But which is why I kind of have this mindset that you can do both, right? While you're operating a company that's putting up buildings, you can also create a company that is doing service work and slowly build it up and have it completely separated from each other, right? So that, again, when shit hits the fan, you're not left holding the bag and you're already prepared for it.
Yeah, interesting. So are you guys, like the contractors you guys work with, are you guys doing more like work on rental units?
Yeah, a lot more work on rental units, a lot more service. There are a few private, companies taking over new spaces. But even that, like I said, like to touch base on what you said, Costa, like there's no incentive here. There's a lot of money leaving the country, no new money coming in. Just the other day, I was taking an Uber somewhere and I was just talking to the Uber driver. He's been here for 4 years. And he was saying the same thing. He's like, I came here, I'm making money and I send it back home. So even a lot of the people that are coming here, they're noticing it very quickly. So they're coming here, making the Canadian money, right? And sending it back home, right? So there's a lot of money like leaving. And it's kind of scary because you start to think of like, where does this go from here? So I think everybody, here in Canada, I think I speak for the majority of the people when we say like, we need a change, right? Like we definitely need a change here because it is affecting the industries. But like to your point, Costa, don't always think negative. Think of how to pivot, think of how to capitalize. And, my recommendation for anybody listening is definitely like service, look at the rental industry, anything to keep you busy. Try to shift to where, unfortunately, the money is kind of like going, right?
Yeah. So yeah, with that being said, using kind of the theme of, focus on what you can control, don't dwell on the what ifs and wait for change and all this stuff. So with that being said, speaking to that contractor listening, that business owner who's trying to grow their business, right? What are some ways, Charlie, you can, grow your business, whether it be improving your sales, advertising, getting your name out there? Like, what are some tactical things someone listening today can implement tomorrow to start that, whatever it is, that ad, that marketing, just getting the word out? Like, what are some steps they can take?
Yeah, like I think the answer to the question really varies on whether you're a company just starting out, whether you're doing service, whether you're doing commercial, you've been in the game for a long time. It really depends. So I'll try to give you like a broad answer. But if you're starting out, when me and Johnny did 15 years ago, you got to advertise, you got to get your name out there, right? So you're banging on doors and you're paying for Google ads, all sorts of avenues through Facebook, whatever the case may be, just to get your name out there and to get some calls, just to get some jobs under your belt, and to make some contacts. Now, fast forward to right now, what do? We've kind of already established our client base. We don't typically take on new clients. But again, we've had these conversations of keeping up with these relationships. So for guys, heading into a recession or, a time where things are very uncertain, you have to literally massage and take care of the relationships that you do have, and you may need to bang on some new doors and create some new relationships. But that meaning like banging on people's doors means getting in their face, taking them out to lunches, introducing yourself, sitting down, spending time with them, talking to other contractors. If if you're a plumber, electricians, if carpenters from being on site, the owners, talk to them. Who else are they bidding for, right? What GCs are they dealing with? So kind of getting their Rolodex of people. You got to think outside the box. You got to get creative, right? And that's something that Johnny had to deal with in the beginning of last year, right?
So that's a good, the way I look at this, right? And I think this is a good topic because the way I look at like getting out there, it's marketing, right? It's sales, it's marketing. And I look at these things very like analytical. So for example, you're a sub-trade, right? First question you ask is, who are your customers, or who do you want your customers to be, right? So for example, like, is your client a GC? Is your client a homeowner? A property manager, right? So like, depending on like what you're trying to become or what company you're trying to become, your customers are different. So depending on who your customer is, then you got to find out like, hey, where do they live? Not literally live, but like, where do they live online? Like, where can you like reach them, whether it be, phone, email, physical flyers, right? You got to connect with your potential customers. So, cause what a lot of, especially newer companies do is they kind of like spray and pray. They do the typical things, right? You set up a website, you set up your social media, and you just start like posting content. But like, for example, in your case, you guys deal with like, big projects. You guys don't even have a social media presence for iPlum, right? Because you just don't need it. Your customers don't live on social media. So think about how ineffective that would be for you guys to set up on Instagram and get business from that, because your customers just don't live there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. Johnny, I know will have a lot to say about this, but just in our space alone, I can't tell you the importance of actually getting in front of people's faces. Construction is like, I always like to call it's the
relationship.
Yeah, it's the last cowboy industry left, right? And a lot of things are done from eye contact and handshakes, and that's just the harsh reality of it. So, you can have the best marketing plan that you want, but the reality is if you're doing large commercial projects, you're working in hospitals, you're doing buildings, you're going to have to stand in front of these guys face to face and get to know them in that way.
Yeah, and I would say, like, just to add to all this, to get your name out for any like new company, like you said, Costa, know your audience, right? Know who your client base is, and my recommendation to all the new guys that are starting up is basically, first things first is word of mouth travels so fast. So, we talk about this all the time. So I would say for all those new companies, like if I was put in that position, you're only as good as your last job. So, responsive, professional, care, follow up with them, because that's typically how it unfolds, especially in the beginning. You do one job or one service call for somebody. You are great to them. You are kind. You are courteous. You are clean. You're, professional. You sent them a quote on time. You were transparent. The invoice matches exactly what you said you were going to do. You cleaned up behind you, which is a massive one. What's going to happen the second you leave? That person, their mother, their cousin, their brother, friend, somebody's going to need it. And it's like, oh, I use this guy. He's great. And then one thing leads to another. And if you always have that mindset from day one, the business will grow organically. It definitely will, right? It might not be at the rate that you want, but also too, you gotta, also take into account like scaling it, because if you're one guy in a truck, there's only so much you can do, and you don't want to promise everybody everything and then not deliver to everybody, right? So I always like tell these guys when they're starting out, just remember, you got to crawl before you can walk. You got to walk before you can run, right? Any of these companies that you're looking at, and it's like, yeah, well, how do I grow to that? And it's like, just understand it's a ride. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, be good on every job you do, be good to the client, be responsive, be respectful, be clean, be punctual, be fair, and you'll notice that the business grows organically.
You know, it's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a contractor recently. So in general, I think a lot of companies nowadays, in any industry, right, including construction, you know, you try and get fancy when it comes to sales, right? Like, what do I mean by that? You know, you kind of read like what I call headline readers, right? So you set up an Instagram, you start posting, and you just kind of expect, like, you set up some Facebook ads, and, you know, because you see this a lot, right, on our feeds. So to me, that's fancy. I think, like Charlie said, great point. You know, in construction, it's still one of those industry that's very like relationship, handshake driven, right? So if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a contractor, if I'm starting out today, and maybe this is a bias because I'm like a little old school when it comes to sales, right? If I'm a contractor, and especially if I'm doing like residential, my marketing would be, I'm going to just try and go to as many events as possible with people, like any type of event with like a crowds of people, you know, 3, 4, 5 a month. And just like to Johnny's point, just meet as many people as I possibly can. And like, just get them to know, like, I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber, right? And like, if you do that 5 times a month, as many, like at least 5 times a month, let's just say, I guarantee at the 12-month mark, you're going to have so much work coming at you. But like to your point, Johnny, who's going to do that? A lot of these guys nowadays, it's like, you know, they want to get to the finish line without running the race. That's what I mean by getting too fancy. Like, you can't replace that old school.
I like
face to face.
Yeah, I like that. I like that example that you used, because I notice a lot of these newer companies, and I'm not saying, look, I'm not knocking them, because some of them have done a great job at doing it, and they get a lot of business out of it. Like, who am I to say that it doesn't work? I'm just, like you said too, Costa, I'm old school. For me, it's all about meeting people, and not getting fancy, because I always say, like, what content are you going to post if you're not doing many jobs, right? Like what type of content are you putting out there, right? I would say what comes first is the relationships. I would say what comes first is the contacts, right? Then based on the work that you're doing, you can start posting content here, there, and everywhere. But if you're strictly relying on content to grow your business in construction, again, I don't know if I just grew up and we came through the old school way. I would say you got to go back to the basics. Again, you know, crawl before you can walk before you can run. You got to go back to the basics. What is the basic, right? You get a call, right? If you're a newer company, you got to understand, you got to run. You know, you get that call, you got to run there, right? You got to show them how responsive you are, right? The second you get there, make sure you make them feel comfortable. Make sure you make them understand that, you know, whatever the problem that it is, you're there to fix it. You know what I mean? The second you fix it, you clean up after yourself, you're courteous, you charge them very fairly, be kind to them, follow up with them. And I'm telling you, from that one is going to come another client. From that one is going to come maybe 2 more, and so on and so forth. And then before you know it, your database just grew, right? And just always remember, especially in today's day and age, you like your database, the contact that you get, keep it in a database, right? Because you can send them a follow-up email or a follow-up text, you know, hey, just checking in, making sure, whatever I fixed was fine. I hope you liked my service. If there's anybody you know, please feel free to give my number out, or please leave a Google review, right? Like something like that, like give a follow-up, right? Those are my recommendations for the new guys just starting out today. Like I know everybody's quick to jump onto social media to get their name out there, which again, it's great. I'm not saying it's not, but when you're a newer company, like you said, Costa, don't get so fancy off the beginning, right? Just make sure you establish, sure, you need a website, 100%. You want to have an Instagram, Facebook page, 100%, right? But just understand that, get back to the basics, right? Like start with the basics, right? Go out there, get a client, do a good job. Hopefully that client leads to 2 other clients, so on and so forth. Maybe you're doing a service call for somebody that their brother owns a construction company. Now they can give you, the contact and they can introduce you, right? So you be friendly, right? Be welcoming. That's my recommendation.
That's all nice, right? But the phone has to ring in order to even be able to do that. So I remember when me and Johnny started out, I think there was like something like north of 150 plumbing and mechanical companies in the GTA. So I was kind of taken aback by that and intimidated. And we quickly realized that all we had to do is just pay someone to optimize our name, and we would just jump to the top of the list if somebody typed in, "I need a plumber in Toronto," right? So just for a few bucks, well, this is 15 years ago. It's going to be more than that now, but it was reasonable, and just by doing that, we would jump to the top of the list. So again, like in a day and age where it's like it's all marketing, where Instagram and social media may not work for companies of our size and the type of work that we do. It may work for one guy in a truck that all he has to do is just set up a tripod, film himself installing a kitchen sink, and he'll quickly gain a following and put his name out there. I actually think that would work to their benefit for those types of companies. So there's all kinds of avenues you can take, but again, like don't be intimidated that there's a bunch of other companies out there. All it is how do you get your name in front of people? And then what Johnny just said really comes into play. You have to capitalize on those jobs that you do get. That phone rings, you run, you do a great job, and then you just build up your company name and your rapport, the 5-star reviews, and then business will come.
Yeah. I think what we're all saying is kind of similar, just to play like kind of not devil's advocate, but another side of it. I think it comes down to just self-awareness, like understanding like what you're good and not good at, right? Like we're kind of all old school. So we're all kind of aligned on this. But with that being said, if you're someone who's very eccentric and like likes posting on social media and like, is in that world, then go all in on that. Like that could be your channel. You just got to do it, and you probably have the same success, if not more success, than the person that's more intimate and physical, right? So I think it just comes down to being aware of what you're good at, what you like doing, but most importantly, because those two things are very important in being consistent. So for example, if you're, not someone that's like an extrovert and likes meeting people, you're probably not going to go to these events 5 times a month. You'll probably be done after a month because it's just not you, right? So I think that's a very important part of it all, is just like the awareness and just sticking to what you're good at and just going all in on that.
Yeah, I would say a mixture between the two. Again, I'm very old school. I like I said, I'm not saying that it's not the right thing to do to post on social media. But again, getting back to your point, Costa, just try at the beginning. Maybe don't get so fancy with it, right? And let your work, like you gotta let your work speak for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, I think I was gonna say I think I kind of did a 180 on that. Like I used to be very like anti-social media, but now I kind of look at it in a way that I don't see it hurting you in any kind of way. Like if you're putting yourself out there, you're giving people an inside look at what you do, your personality. I really can't see a case that it becomes a negative. Like somebody might say, well, I'm not going to hire him because he's on Instagram and he's showing people the work that he's doing. Right? There's not a case.
Like,
yeah.
No. Like remember the first thing I said, it's like, where do your customers live? Look at stats. I think the average today is like the average person is spending, I think it's like 7 or 8 hours a day on social media on their phone. So if most people are on their phone, then like how could it possibly hurt you to like try and connect with them on social media if that's where they are? Like it could only be positive.
Like we have one guy that we follow. He's a plumber from Boston. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but he was a smaller guy and he kind of documented his whole rise up through the ranks. So he's got a bigger company now, does larger projects in Boston. But for a guy like that, it's like he's got a recognizable face, a recognizable name. And now if you're in the Boston area and you need some plumbing work, he'll probably be the first guy that you think about. And if you actually get him on the phone and you're able to get that company to come do the job, it was like, fuck, almost like you almost look at him like he's a celebrity, right? It's like, wow, I got this guy. That's great. And you know, you're going to feel confident, comfortable that he's the one that's coming to do the job. So I actually think it can really be beneficial.
I totally agree. It's like, it works on what's called like implicit memory, right? So think about, it's the same thing as like why like Coca-Cola, for example, will spend millions of dollars just to have a Coke can in the background of a movie, right? Because it hits people's implicit memories. So take that example analogy into Instagram. If you're, again, back to stats, people are on average 7-8 hours on their phone. If you're constantly on social media and you're constantly seeing that little circle of like that plumbing company who's always friggin' posting, even if you're not looking at their content all the time, it's working that same part of your brain, that implicit memory where you know it's there, you're not paying attention to it. But what happens is when now you're in need of plumbing work, guess who the first person that's probably going to come to mind, even if you never even spoke to them, just because you're constantly seeing their logo or their image on social media. So, but to get that effect, back to my point about being consistent, you just got to keep doing it. And if you do it long enough, it's bound to work.
100%.
So that's that. Switching gears, different topic. I've been seeing a lot of recent articles lately, both in Canada and the US about like particularly suicides and mental health in the construction industry. So I dug up some research. So the latest data I could find was, so in 2022, an estimated 6,000 construction workers died by suicide. In Canada, it's a little harder to get that information, but they think the numbers are similar. And this is another interesting one. Construction workers have a 65% higher suicide rate than workers in all other sectors. 65% higher suicide rate than workers in all other sectors.
I thought dentists were number one. Are they not number one anymore?
Maybe dentists are higher. It's not. It's just specifying 65%. Maybe dentists are like 85% higher. I don't know. Yeah. But for this, yeah. So that's pretty significant, right? So with that being said, like you guys being in this industry for as long as you have, decades, you've probably come across so many different types of people. You guys probably experience things, we're speaking now in the middle of winter. It's like minus 40 outside, got guys working. So no sun, particularly here in Canada, we can go weeks, right, without seeing sun. Like that alone can do something to you. So I'd love to hear, just like kick it off, Johnny. What are you seeing out there? Like how can these guys improve their state of mind and what's going on?
It's tough. Like hearing those stats, I'm actually kind of blown away, to be totally honest. But at the same time, it's like, fuck, it's not surprising, like you said, it's like minus 40 outside with the wind chill. These construction workers, like especially in the winter, they don't skip a beat. Everybody has to go to work. If they don't work, they don't make money. They're waking up. It's dark outside. They're starting work. Freezing all fucking day long. Flying forms, getting yelled at, working in a hostile environment. By the time they leave, it's dark outside. They're getting home. It can be depressing. It definitely can be. And I know we had one episode where we talked about like mental strength, right? And pushing through. But again, when it comes to mental health and illness and people going, taking it a step further, it's sad to see because, a lot of these guys are skilled. It's just, it's a tough environment out there, like especially in Canada, like you said, Costa. They're not getting sun every day. They're waking up dark outside. By the time they're working, then the sun comes out hours later. And then, before they even get to leave work, it's dark outside again. I can definitely see how it has, it takes a toll on somebody, right? Like I was just speaking to one of my friends that we play soccer on the same team. And, I remember Sunday night, he was just saying, he's like, shit, man. He's like, I'm going to hate my life this week, because of, this cold, that we got this week. And, like Sunday night, he's already thinking about like how shit the week's going to be. Right. And it's a common thing, right? Like a lot of construction workers, they talk like this, right? Even a particular job, you're freezing all day. There's some people have a shack where, if they're working like on a high rise building or they're working outside, there is some form of like, okay, go in and heat up, but it's typically like what, 10, 15 minutes. Like a lot of guys will even like hide to go to the washroom just because, the porta potty might have a heater in there. Right. It's like we always say, it's rough on the body, man. It definitely is. So, all I can say is, again, I tip my hat to any construction worker out there. It's a very hard job. I think a lot of times they're undervalued. And I think we talked about this like on the last episode, right? And for any foremans or owners listening, I know we all had to do it and everybody has to put in their time. But, also too, with anybody coming in, especially like, our apprentices and stuff like that, like let's just be mindful, right? Like we are a community, right? And again, I'm not saying that we all have to baby them, but just let's all be mindful. Let's all be there for each other because, again, you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know what's going to push them over the edge. And like I said, that stat that you just gave me, where it's like 65, like construction workers are 65% more likely to commit suicide. Is that the stat?
65%.
Yeah, that's insane, man. That's insane. And again, like I said, it's hard, it's rough, especially here in Canada in the winter, and even in the U.S. in the states that get like the really cold weather. It's very, very tough. But the one thing I will say is, you look all over the world, you go to the Caribbean, Europe, like nobody works like we do here in North America, right? We have that grit, right? We have that grit, that day, rain, snow, shine, cold, not cold. They get it done. You know what I mean? So I try to look at the positives from this. Just anybody listening on that stat, like look at the positives of what we do here and what we don't.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm wondering if these stats are just in this part of the world. Like I was in Portugal a few months ago, and they had painters doing the exterior of the building, and I kid you not, I did not see a single painter actually like with a paintbrush. Every time I walked by, the guys were like literally taking naps like on the side.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like nobody, I'm sorry, right? If anybody's taking offense to this, I'm not knocking it down. Like I'm, European descent. I talk to my parents about this all the time as well. Nobody builds and nobody's like committed to getting something done like we are here in North America. Like we literally kill ourselves to meet a deadline. You know what I mean? Like these construction schedules, they're aggressive, right? I've seen 30-story buildings, from start to finish done in 2.5 years, right? Like just to touch base, Costa, like when I was in Europe last time, in Portugal actually, in the Algarve, there was a 3-story building. It was like 10 units, right? And I remember going there and then coming back like 2.5 years later, and it's like the building's not even near completion. Like if that was here, like that is unacceptable. Like a 15 unit building, that would be done in, 16, 17 months, start to finish, right? So again, what is it? I don't know. Is it the crazy timelines that we're given, such short timelines where, the way construction works here is like bang, 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 like one after the other after the other. It's all about scheduling, all about project managing. And there's no excuses, right? Where you look anywhere else in the world and they're just a lot more laid back, right? I would say.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was going to kick it to you, Charlie, because I know you probably have some great insights on this. Like with everything we just said,
man,
both of you guys, have endured everything we're talking about, the cold, you name it, hammers being thrown at you. Like I've heard all the stories, right? So you guys have firsthand lived through this. So like, what advice, like, what did you do? Like, how did you endure this and have that positivity and, what's your kind of insights?
Honestly, first of all, I'm not even shocked by those stats. Like funny, John, you were talking about just like Europe and the Caribbean. You go down there and it seems like everything is moving at such a slow pace, but yet they're complaining that they want to leave there because there's no work. But then you see the flip side, you come to Toronto and people are literally fucking committing suicide at these insane rates, right? So it's like, what's going on here? For us, I think we've completely normalized this type of production. So I think we're like way too far in the other extreme where the price of things have skyrocketed. So guys are working 40, 50, 60-hour weeks. They're breaking their backs in extreme cold, hot, whatever conditions it may be. It's just we've completely normalized it. That's just the average Joe. And that average Joe can't even afford to buy a home, right? That's the reality of it. So that's where we are. As to like the suicide rates and, being, I think you said 65% more likely. I was roofing when I was 14 years old. And at the time, I remember thinking to myself that these roofers, like the older guys like that, like my friend's father was employing, we were the kid crew and then he had like the older guys. I'm like, these are the roughest looking fucking guys I've ever seen in my life. Like I in my mind, roofers were like, like the worst of the worst when it came to like, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, just rough around the edges in general. Until I fast forward about 8 years when I was a plumber and I was working in high rise, and I met the steel guys, the steel workers that do rebar, and they made these residential roofers look like Girl Scout cookie girls selling you cookies at the door. Like that, like you want to talk about like bad. I remember speaking to one of the workers who was up to 35 Percocets per day. Like I don't know if anybody, like, if you don't know what Percocets are, they're painkillers. If you put that into perspective, like 35 Percocets would be like, I don't even know, like maybe like 70 T3s. It's just astronomical. You had guys taking like 10 oxys a day. You had guys doing cocaine in the porta potties, like on breaks, just doing drugs. And you talk to them and it's actually like really heartbreaking. I was just like, I was like sleeving a building and you actually get to know these guys. And it's not like these guys are doing this because they're just trying to have fun and party. The guy tells me, he's like, when I don't take this, I can't even get out of bed. Like my back is literally fucking broken. Like I'm in pain 24 hours a day. And I've gotten to the point that I need to have these drugs or else I can't even function normally. I can't spend time with my kids. I can't, make love to my wife. I can't, let alone come into work and make a paycheck. So I think back and now you see these stats. It doesn't even surprise me, but I feel like we've made our bed. Like this is the type of production that we demand from our people. and they're barely rewarded for it at this point, right? Like you could argue, oh, well, what do you mean? A licensed plumber now is making $55 an hour. But yeah, but the reality is a house doesn't cost $300,000 anymore. A house costs $1.3 million, right? So it's completely irrelevant. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than I saw it 10, 15 years ago, and now the numbers, they add up. It makes complete sense. And it's heartbreaking. It truly is, because I don't know if I have an actual like intelligent comment to make on that to those people. I don't know what the solution is, because who am I to tell that guy that, you know, he's got to go to rehab and everything. Like, you know, like I've talked to guys that have gone to rehab that have come back. You know, like, what do you tell them? You're in the wrong trade. Get out of that trade. Maybe that's the answer, right? But you're telling a 45, 50-year-old guy that's worked his entire life to work his way up the chain of that company and earn what he's making, to completely, you know, go back and change what he's doing and change his career. It's tough. It's heartbreaking.
You know what? Sorry to interrupt here, but Costa, I want to get your insight on this, because I know I know you're not in the construction industry. Obviously, you know, we all talk to contractors every day, multiple times a day. And like, somebody sitting from the outside, like what's your outlook on a stat like that? Like, where do you think that stems from? Like, does it surprise you? Does it not surprise you? Because you know, like even like Charlie said, like, look, man, we've been around these guys, you know, like I've been a plumber since I was 16 years old, you know, like more than half my life. And to me, it's just like regular, like they're normal guys. They're really good guys. It's just, you know, it's like I always say, it's a rough environment. But, you know, as somebody who's not there or who wasn't there to experience this every day, day in and day out, you know, be put up to the task to, you know, I don't know, stand on the edge of a fucking...
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So first of all, like, I have the most respect and admiration for people in construction, right? Just in general, right? There's some of the, like, two of my best friends in construction. Like, I'm the only male in my family that's not in construction. So like, I'm just around this world a lot. I don't like pick up a hammer every day. Like, you know, I'm exposed to it. So just the respect, admiration to anyone in construction, that goes without saying. With that being said, look, at the end of the day, I'm just the type of person where, you know, I don't like to play the victim mentality and wear that victim cap. It's like, if I decided to get in construction, and like, you know, I should be aware that, like, shit, the conditions are going to be rough. I'm going to work out in the cold. It's going to suck. But look, I'm an individual. I'm a man. I made that decision. So I'm not going to be the victim. I'm going to do whatever I can to get my mind right, whether it's going to the gym, figure out, like, you know, what I can do to, like, you know, de-stress and all this stuff. And you kind of have to have no choice but to figure it out. And I don't know, that might sound harsh and, you know, unfair in a lot of cases, but I don't know. It's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is harsh. It's the reality. You know, it's time for you to dig yourself out of that hole.
No, the reason I ask is because I know we spoke about this on, you know, a few episodes ago, you know, regarding basically like how construction, and, you know, the trades can give you like almost like a second chance at life. You know, and it's true, because, you know, we've seen that as well. We've seen guys change their lives around, get into construction when all else fails. You know, they went to school, they did this, they did that. It didn't work out. So, you know, they just became, you know, a framer, a tile setter, a drywaller, you know, an HVAC technician, a plumber, electrician. But like a statistic that you just, you know, like touching on that topic, I want to say it's surprising, but not surprising, right? So the reason I asked that is because, you know, we had one of those positive conversations a few episodes ago on like how it can really change your life, you know, how, like, you know, people were addicts. They changed their life around. Now they're a foreman. They get it. They understand, what it takes to get your mind right. But for those people that are like spiraling out of control, but yet have to wake up every day, I know a lot of tradesmen, and I know everybody listening too knows the same people that we're talking about, where it's like a lot of guys, they hate what they do. And I've always tried to figure out like why that is, right? Like what is it in
that goes beyond construction though. I think
no,
general,
but no,
I'd
no.
say like 8 out of 10 people in the workforce probably hate what they do.
No, 100%. But I would say, getting back to like the way we work and operate here in North America, it doesn't happen in the rest of the world, right? When it comes to like, construction, right? So that's where it's like, that's kind of why I was asking the question, because it's like from somebody on the outside looking in, I wonder what they think about that, right? Like where it's like, would that scare somebody to get into construction? Like a statistic like that? Like, would that be like, because that kind of tells you, if you go based off that stat, that's kind of like, fuck, that must
You
be
gotta have thick skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a prerequisite, like you gotta have like thick skin to get in construction.
Yeah.
And that success story you said, it's like, you're right. Like what other industry do you know where you can give people second chances, whether it's like an ex-alcoholic, drug addict, someone who got out of jail, right? So it's a beautiful in that sense. But those people that turned around were the people that didn't play the victim mentality. Like they got out of their situation and they gave themselves a second chance as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need serious thick skin.
I think, what, you're right. You're right. And that's why I wanted to ask somebody from the outside looking in. And I think you kind of, nailed it right on the head, where it's like, I think that's what it comes down to. I think in construction, no matter what, the number one, requirement is you got to have thick skin, man. You know what I mean? Like it's a fucking bitch of an industry. You know what I mean? And that's why maybe, me and Charlie, that's why we're big advocates on when we run our company, want it to feel like a family environment. Right? It's a bitch of an industry. Make it the best you can with the people that you're working with every day.
Yeah. I know, Charlie, you had that example when you I think in roofing, you got a hammer thrown at you or something. It's like, maybe if you're hiring someone first day, if they can take a hammer to the gut or something, it's like, okay.
What is it? Yeah. What's that analogy from Dodgeball? What's that analogy from Dodgeball? If you could... The movie Dodgeball.
If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball or something.
But Charlie has another. Charlie actually, you know what? Like touching base on just like how rough it could be. Charlie has a good story of another good like young story of the roof when he almost fell off.
Yeah.
Tell that one, Charlie. Tell that one for everybody listening. I think they'll understand why you have to have thick skin after this one.
Yeah. So looking back, I mean, I was like tearing roofs and shingling when I was like 14 years old, and I was doing it. I'll never forget. I was making $8 an hour, and honestly, it was just normal to me. It was just like a summer job. I think I was just turning 14. I had just turned 14, heading into high school, and one day we had ripped a roof. And my friend's father was at the bottom. He was starting to shingle from the bottom up. So he was on the first row. And I was standing on a jack. It was a very steep roof. And the wood boards were so rotted out that the jack just gave out. Like 10 nails just like popped right out. And I started sliding down the roof. And I slid right past him. And it was like a 3-story townhouse. And he grabbed me by my shirt and my legs were dangling over, and I was like literally about to fall off the roof. And he caught me with his one hand and he literally lifted me up over his head and he just sat me down right beside him. And you can imagine I was, white like a ghost. I was probably hyperventilating. And he looked at me dead in the eyes and he just said, "Where the fuck do you think you're going?" He's like, "I told you I need you for the whole day." Right? And I remember just crawling up the roof And I just like laid on top of the ridge, and I just kind of sat there motionless for like probably an hour, shaking. But after the hour, I got over it, and I just picked up a hammer. He re-nailed the jack into another piece of wood, and I just went back to work. And honestly, I probably didn't really give it too much thought until like the last time I told the story, which is maybe like a year ago. Right? I think it just becomes part of you. It just molds who you are and shapes you as a person, as a contractor. And, it's sad because, like, Costa, you just said, maybe nowadays you should that's like a prerequisite, you walk on the job site and you get a hammer thrown at you. But the reality of it is you'll probably get sued. You'll probably get in huge shit. There's a lot of
yeah, I definitely was joking.
I know, right? No, but I was actually just gonna follow that up with saying, like, it's not even, and I know you're joking about the hammer, right? But it's not even that. It's, we've had our foremans maybe call these new guys by name, like, fucking stupid, or because they're in the heat of the moment, which again, you should never disrespect people on a human level, right? But even that is enough to get you in a lot of hot water these days, because we're just such a frail civilization, like, so
yeah, definitely.
I think this could stem a lot of things deeper than what we're talking about. But actually, I wanted to you piqued my curiosity, Charlie, about the dentists. So here you go. So basically, in summary, like, while dentists have been historically associated with high suicide rates, current data and analysis do not conclusively support dentists have higher rates than construction workers. Instead, construction workers are now often cited as having one of the highest suicide rates across industries. This might reflect changes in occupational stress, access to mental health resource, or data collection, etc. So, yeah. So it seems like
there it is.
And with that being said, right, I know we're talking about this, and there's obviously a lot of people going through things. And the good news is, I'm just trying to pull it up here, but it seems like there are a lot of, kind of systems and resources and programs in place, like, mental health first training, abuse training. So there seems like a lot of, I'll even post a lot of these in the show notes as well. So yeah, it's very empathetic to people going through it.
100%, man. And again, any construction worker listening, guys, job you do, it's very tough. Don't let anybody degrade you on what you do. If the world didn't have us, there would be no houses to live in. There would be no buildings to go into. There would be no, roads to drive on. We're not, just because you're not in a suit and tie every day or in a fancy office doesn't make you any less of a person, because believe me, man, the job that we do, it's required all over the world, and it's required every single day, right? We, like, literally, construction is the heartbeat of, I would say, any country all over the world, right? You look at Rome, you look at just anything, right? Like, those structures that are built, the structures that we're building today, it's all by construction workers, right? So,
yeah. And with that being said, too, I'll just add this: construction workers are some of the toughest and grittiest guys out there, mentally and physically, for what they have to endure, right, with the weather conditions and the amount of work that they do. So, to Costa's point, that at the end of the day, you're the only one left to blame. If you're abusing drugs or alcohol, you have to be, just like you're mentally and physically strong to do the job that you're doing, you have to take that energy and be mentally and physically strong to kick these habits, because you'll have nobody to blame but yourself in the end.
Yeah, very well said. All right, boys. Good discussions today. I want to wrap it up with this, actually. So in our last podcast, we talked about the tariffs and how they're implemented, and like the timing of that was really good. We got a lot of good feedback and discussion from that episode. And shortly after we recorded that, it was announced that February 1st, the U.S. is supposedly implementing these tariffs. So we actually put together this ebook, this guide on tariffs in construction, what they mean, practical tips and things you could do to stay ahead of it. So I'm going to post this in the show notes as well. It's a very valuable, 6 or 7 page guide with some good information. So if you want a copy of this, I'll post the link and we will send that to you. Other than that, boys, another good chat. Anything else to add?
No.
That's it. Keep it moving. All right, guys. Pleasure as always. We'll talk soon.
Pleasure. Later.